Okay, all right, okay, all right, okay. So here, if everything's working correctly, we are here. Presentation of Eric Hoffer, what he's about, what he is about, excuse me, and all the rest, all the good stuff. All right, Eric Hoffer. The exact date of his birth is actually not known, but he did grow up in New York. If you look up on YouTube any of his interviews, he sounds very German. This is because he was raised by a his both of his parents were, I think, immigrants from Germany, and his nanny, which he spent most of the time with, she was actually German. And after she was done with the job in New York, which was mostly him, she returned to Germany. Okay, this is a quote by a guy that actually interviewed him, and you can see that interview on YouTube. Unfortunately, there's only one, but I think he's done several. They're just not on YouTube. If somebody could find an Eric Hoffer interview, like the rest of them, that would be amazing. So this quote by Eric Severai, it could be said, I believe, that he's the first important American writer, working class born, who remained working class in his habits, associations, environment. I cannot think of another. Therefore, he was a national resource. Eric Severai. This is Eric Hoffer. I think looks like the this was taken during the interview itself. This must be late 60s. Yeah, he was so popular in the 60s that he met with Lyndon Johnson, whom he liked. He said that he thinks like the working class does. Now, whether or not the war on poverty produced good results or not is up for debate. I would say it's mostly produced bad results, but um, Eric Hoffer was essentially Democrat. He for the last, I think, more than 30 years of his life, he lived in California. So he once said that, if you want to know how the average person votes, you ask me because I'm average. I'm just a regular guy, he said basically. So this is him having a good old time with Lyndon Johnson. He was kind of humble. He didn't think too highly of himself in a way. He says, if anybody asks me what I have accomplished, I would say all I have accomplished is that I have written a few good sentences. So this is, I presume this is him at work. Looks like a couple of workmen in back, or kind of, not really. I don't know. Anyway, he was known to read a lot and at home to just write, and he didn't think of anything more glorious than coming home to a half finished paragraph and then resuming writing. That was his thing. He got into reading by backstory, a little bit of backstory. So he was blind for a couple of years when he was young, and then unexpectedly his sight returned. And when his sight returned, he thought he might lose sight again. So he started educating himself. He kind of gave up on the traditional route because he thought he would not succeed. I myself think he would have succeeded, but in some ways, maybe it's better that he was self-educated. Anyway, be that as it may, so he one time he wanted to get a really big book, and he found the essays of this French guy, Montaigne, I believe it is pronounced, and so he read his essays. I have not read them, but I heard they're good. Anyway, so this is a very interesting thing. He was very popular with Catholics. And this is a Eric Hoffer quote as well. They tell me that I'm a theologian. My theology is a theology of the soul, you see. I believe that God and the devil are fighting their battle, not in heaven, but in man's soul. And I have a definition of God. Anything that humanizes is God, and anything that dehumanizes is the devil. They love that. So they pass the word around. So whenever the Jesuits are, I'm a hero. So it's kind of funny because he himself was atheist. So yeah, this just goes to show that the truth is true no matter where it comes from. If it comes from an atheist or agnostic or a very religious man. And yeah, he was popular, and I would say very popular in the 50s and 60s, because I think 54 was when the nature of mass movements came out, on the nature of mass movements, which is his most well-known book. Okay, Eric Hoffer and Truth. So I like this is a slide actually I've done for Catholics. There's an order, Augustinians of the Assumption, very small order, about 800 brothers and priests around the world. And I was living there for a while, and they asked me to do a presentation on something. So this is actually the slides I'm showing you is actually from the presentation itself. And it ended up being too long because I had after every slide we had like a discussion, so it ended up being way too long. Anyway, so it's just a fun fact. So Eric Hoffer and Truth. We lie the loudest when we lie to ourselves. This is very important because in the Christian kind of theology or whatever, or or even the Jewish, because the Jewish share the Old Testament. So the Ten Commandments, one of the commandments is do not lie. But we forget not to lie to ourselves. So Eric Hoffer is making an interesting point here. He says that we lie the loudest when we lie to ourselves, which is very interesting, and I think very true. And if everybody got right with themselves, like I'm not saying I'm perfect. Obviously, I have many flaws, and but I do recognize there's a tendency to lie to oneself. And yeah, helpful quote. All right. This is how we deal with truth. How terribly hard and almost impossible it is to tell the truth. More than anything else, the artist in us prevents us from telling aught as it really happened. We deal with truth as the cook deals with meat and vegetables. So it's like we cook, like slice it nicely, now slice and dice and cook it up and present it in a really neat, nice way. Sometimes with white lies or lies by omission, things like that, to make it seem like our lies or what we were doing is better than it actually was. And of course, this is very common. Anybody with an ounce of introspection will realize this, that yeah, when we are not just the truth with ourselves, but telling the truth to other people, how hard it is. But I'm not saying that we should or ought to tell the truth to everybody. No, it's just interesting how he presents this quote, which is very true. All right. There are many who have grave scruples about deceiving. I think he means deceiving others, but think it as nothing to deceive themselves. Yeah. So there's a tendency to deceive others and think nothing of it. So I think maybe it's the lack in the culture, like they don't emphasize that actually being truthful to oneself and not lying to oneself is as important as not lying to other people. I think that's kind of disregarded, and it shouldn't be disregarded because it's important. And the next one is propaganda does not deceive people. It merely helps them to deceive themselves. Yes, Communist Party. Join the Communist Party. This is the way to progress. Apply now. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. The communism in the world has produced many bad results. A lot of people died. There is people saying, of course, that it wasn't real communism or it wasn't real Marxism, but if you're honest, the results speak for themselves. And this can be applied actually I'm trying to find a word here. Multifunctional, multi-layered, whatever. It can be applied to many fields. Multi-field. Multi-fields. Right. If that's the word. So yeah, in many fields you can people are very eager to deceive themselves in some way. And I think in modern times, Jordan Peterson talks a lot about um, there's a tendency in people to shirk from responsibility, and I think we're gonna go into that in a bit later on. Okay. We are ready to die for an opinion, but not for a fact. Indeed, it is by readiness to die that we try to prove the factness of our own opinion. Well, there was a Chaz in I think Seattle a few months ago that they were ready basically to die for their ideal of establishing a new country within a country, and didn't work out. And nobody's out there protesting for math, facts in math like 2+2 is 4 and things like that, because that doesn't appeal to people. It's about politics usually. Opinions held strongly, like global warming. There's a young Swedish girl, Greta Thunberg, I think is her name, and she's very much into that. Yes. Okay. Not stall here. Disappointment is a sort of bankruptcy, the bankruptcy of a soul that expands too much in hope and expectation. So in a way, he's saying here that if you are expecting too much, maybe you should not expect too much, because by expecting too much, you kind of get a sense of inner bankruptcy because you don't achieve that. And I think it is, well, in one sense, it is good to expect a lot from yourself. But in another way, I think it's not, because if you expect too much, and if you're not easy with yourself, it's very easy to be disappointed with yourself constantly. And I do not think that's a good way. I think it's rewarding yourself for progress. Progress, not perfection. I think that's a much better way to go about it. Anyway, all right, okay. This quote deals with this, which I think is a very important, one of the best quotes in this presentation here. It goes like this: it is an evil thing to expect too much either from ourselves or from others. Disappointment in ourselves does not moderate our expectations from others. On the contrary, it raises them. It is as if we wish to be disappointed with our fellow man. One does not really love mankind when one expects too much from them. So there's a funny slide, funny picture underneath, but it just shows that is very bad to expect too much from ourselves or from others. And when we are disappointed with ourselves, we raise the expectations, which is very interesting. I think it's usually the people that are disappointed with themselves that are the biggest troublemaker in society overall. It is not the people that have everything figured out. It's people that do not have it, but then they go out and try to change the world and um, make it how they want it to be. Again, this is a kind of alluding to what Jordan Peterson in modern times is saying. But back in the 50s, back in the 50s and 60s, this is what Eric Hoffer was saying already. And I believe this is why he was so popular. Right. On perception, one of my favorites again. We usually see only the things we are looking for, so much so that we sometimes see them where they are not. So this is, I guess this would be called confirmation bias, and also cherry picking data. Anything that doesn't confirm our worldview will be disregarded. Yeah, so that's part of the reason why debating politics or anything like that is, or just a worldview will be skewed, because it depends where you're sitting. It depends where you're looking from. If you're looking from um, like mountaintop, the world is going to look way different than if you're looking from inside a dumpster. Um, I don't know if that's a good analogy for this. Okay. It's just saying that basically, or even let's say, okay, personalize it. Imagine you're in a very bad emotional place. Now you're sad, let's say, and everything around you, even if it's not sad, might seem sad. You might see a little kid that's kind of upset about something on the street, and that might seem sad. You might see somebody uh, that's like sitting by himself in a park, and you might see that as sad, where others might see it as interesting or something else. So it depends where you're sitting emotionally and otherwise. That's why perception is very tricky, and that's why some, I think, meditation techniques say not to trust your own thoughts, because it's sometimes that will get you in trouble. So kind of to be more of like an observer. I think that's a very wise thing to do. Eric Hoffer on loving your neighbor. The capacity for getting along with our neighbor depends to a large extent on the capacity for getting along with ourselves. The self-respecting individual will try to be as tolerant of his neighbor's shortcomings as he is of his own. Now, this is all about how far we have come in accepting ourselves, because the way we treat others is in a large extent, I think, the way we treat ourselves. So if we do not like ourselves, there's a lot higher chance that we do not like other people, do not get along with other people. If you can tolerate yourself, then you're more likely to tolerate others. So kindness, same thing. People are kind to other people but forget to be kind to themselves. So hence the passive aggressiveness, because they are, some of them are wanting something back. They're doing it because they're kind of empty inside. Anyway, I'm kind of psychologizing this too much, but basically this is excellent stuff. All right, let me go another one. No. Okay, full screen, go back. Okay, this features a quote by Carl Jung at the back, but it says this is all Eric Hoffer stuff. The remarkable thing is that we really love our neighbor as ourselves. We do unto others as we do unto ourselves. We hate others when we hate ourselves. We are tolerant towards others when we tolerate ourselves. We forgive others when we forgive ourselves. We are prone to sacrifice others when we are ready to sacrifice ourselves. Right. So again, the same kind of principle. the attitude we are holding towards ourselves is in a large degree responsible for the attitude that we hold towards other people. We hate others when we hate ourselves. Interesting. And then, of course, the very famous Carl Jung quote: "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Right. I think this is a very practical quote. You don't really love humanity if you expect too much from it. And also a kind of theoretical one, because a lot of people wanted to just love humanity, but they're not loving the neighbor. So it is easier to love humanity as a whole than to love one's neighbor. Very true. All right. So you accept certain unlovely things about yourself and manage to live with them. The atonement for such an acceptance is that you make allowances for others, that you cleanse yourself of the sin of self-righteousness. Yeah. How many times? Well, there's been, I remember years ago, there was some Republican politician. I don't think this was an isolated case where publicly he was against gay marriage, and then it turned out that he was a gay man, and he was publicly railing against gay marriage. So very interesting. So this is a very kind of religious figure, Mother Teresa. But this is a very also true quote: "If you judge people, you have no time to love them." So I don't think she's saying here to never judge. I don't think Jesus says to never judge. But she's making a point here that if you judge people, you have no time to love them. Because, and again, this is very true in politics. If you go out there and judge somebody because they voted for Brexit, they voted for Trump, they voted for Obama, they don't believe in climate change. They do believe in climate change. They don't recycle, or they, whatever it is, whatever the trigger point is for you. Yeah, it's like, I don't think I think it's kind of holy in a way. It's holy to love people despite their flaws, because, again, piggyback on previous Eric Hoffer quotes, it's all about self-acceptance. Well, this one as well, it's all about self-acceptance. And if you live in self-acceptance, you are much more likely to accept other people. You might not agree with them, but you're much more likely to accept their flaws, and don't mean to hang out with them either. It just it's kind of like a mental attitude you hold against them. And besides, if you have a resentment against somebody, they're living in your mind anyway, so it's like they're torturing you in a way, because you're torturing yourself, because you're holding the judgments. Anyway, I'm getting too philosophical with this. Let's move on. Okay, this is bound to be very popular. Eric Hoffer and communism. Some of the worst some of the worst tyrannies of our day generally are vowed to the service of mankind, yet can function only by pitting neighbor against neighbor. The all-seeing eye of a totalitarian regime is usually the watchful eye of the next door neighbor. Yeah, this is okay. What's that? What's that Soviet joke? There's a joke that there's two police officers. This is a Soviet joke. Obviously, we're talking about Soviet Union. There's it was a 10 p.m. curfew, so nobody could be outside after 10 p.m. And so these two police officers standing on the street, and they see a guy running, right? And this guy starts shooting at this guy, and he misses, and the guy runs away. And the other police officers is like, why did you shoot him? It's not 10 o'clock yet. It's quarter to 10. And the other guy's like, yeah, well, I know him. He's a friend of mine. I know where he lives. He can't make it home in 15 minutes. so, so it's basically destroying friendships because suspicion. Um, yeah, if there's no, like, you have to choose your loyalty. And that's the terrible thing, loyalty to the state or loyalty to your friend, and how many people would choose loyalty to the state because the state will actually punish you if you're loyal and you found out, if you're loyal to your friend. But if you're loyal to your state, you can always, like, if your friend makes a mistake, you rat them out and you're free, and your friend goes to Siberia or whatever, goes to the gulag, and is never seen from again. All right. Okay, this is a theme that also appears in other Eric Hoffer books, or at least I've heard him talk about this in the interview that he did with Eric Sever. I highly recommend that interview, and it's about he's saying that the ratio between the supervisory personnel and the producing personnel is the highest wherever the intellectuals are in power, and that's why in the communist country, it's almost like half the population is supervising the other half. And this says, no matter how noble the objectives of a government, if it blurs decency and kindness, cheapens human life, and breeds ill will and suspicion, it is an evil government. Let me give you another example. There's a joke that this guy had a parrot that could talk, and this guy lost the parrot. And the very next morning, like 7 a.m., he goes to the KGB's office, and they let him in. And the guy's like, well, I don't know why you come to us. We're the KGB. And the guy's like, yeah, but I have this parrot, and I want you to know that I do not agree with anything that my parrot has to say. Yeah. These jokes are pretty bad, but they make a point across that um, anything will be used against you, any kind of evidence, and that just that that's important because um, in a free society like America, these things were unheard of back in the day. Unheard of. Like, you can say whatever you want, free speech, and the Soviet Union was the opposite. If you criticize or if you say anything that could be misconstrued, that could be seen as, that could be seen as you criticizing, then you're done. You're done. You could either be dead soon or you go to the gulag, Siberia or whatever, and you work the fields, whatever they made you do. All right. Next one is, the sick in the soul insist that it is humanity that is sick, and they are the surgeons to operate on it. They want to turn the world into a sick room, and once they get humanity strapped to the operating table, they operate on it with an axe. Again, the classic example, Chaz, recently, where politically they are anti-police and they get, or anti-borders as well, and then they get in, and what do? They create a border, and then they have their own police, and that's even more brutal than the police they're protesting against. So, classic. Those who would sacrifice a generation to realize an ideal are the enemies of mankind. Yeah, so any kind of ideology like communism or anything that requires a certain amount of sacrifice, I think, is to be viewed with suspicion. And that's what Eric Hoffer is warning us here. And obviously we got, this is actually Karl Marx here. I'm not sure. I think this is Engels, his buddy, and this is Lenin. I'm not sure what it says here, but this is Mao. Obviously, the Mao's revolution also killed a lot of people, as well as the Lenin's, and then Stalin, probably more than 20 million or more combined between Lenin and Stalin. Okay, now more to the easygoingness. Out of the heavy conversation about communism, people dying. So easygoingness. This is very interesting because not many people think of this. That an easygoing person is probably more accessible to the realization of eternity, the endless flow of life and death, than one who takes his prospects and duties over seriously. It is the over serious who are truly frivolous. And frivolous is not a good word. It's I have to look it up. My gosh. Frivolous. Let's see. Misspelled frivolous. Great. Okay, not having any serious purpose or value. So he's saying that does not have any serious value. If you're doing that, there's no value in that. Amazing. It is over serious who are truly frivolous. William James quote. Common sense and a sense of humor are the same thing, moving at different speeds. A sense of humor is just common sense dancing. Yeah. Very much agree with this. Sense of humor is very important. Again, the most important point is and remains not to take oneself seriously. And here we have a quote by Mahatma Gandhi. If I had no sense of humor, I would long ago have committed suicide. I don't know if this is an actual quote, but I hope it is because it's, you know how a lot of these quotes are actually misattributed to people. So, but there's something to be said about sense of humor. And I think that's why people love stand-up comedians because they just break it down, common sense stuff. It's just like William James was saying, it's common sense, but sense of humor is common sense dancing. I like that. Okay, let's move on. Eric Hoffer and the blame game. Okay, this is particularly important in politics because politics is full of blaming others, outright lying, and bearing false witness, which is lying about what somebody has done or their intentions. So Eric Hoffer here, to find the cause of our ills in something outside ourselves, something specific that can be spotted and eliminated, is a diagnosis that cannot fail to appeal. To say that the cause of our troubles is not in us but in the Jews and pass immediately to the extermination of the Jews is a prescription likely to find a wide acceptance. Obviously, this is referring to the Nazi regime and the anti-Jewish policies, the cruel policies, and then the Holocaust that resulted from the Nazi hatred of the Jewish people. But this can be applied to many things, like the Democrats hate Republicans and Republicans hate Democrats, some of them. And this is very common. The blame game, other parties are at fault. While the truth is often somewhere in between. Yeah. Okay, this is not going to be very popular, but I decided to I include it anyway because I think this is very important, and this is from a column that Eric Hoffer wrote shortly after the war in the late 60s. So he says here that things permitted to other nations are forbidden to the Jews. Other nations drive out thousands, even millions of people, and there is no refugee problem. Russia did it. Poland and Czechoslovakia did it. And Turkey threw out millions, Greeks in Algeria, and a million Frenchmen. Indonesia threw out heavens know how many Chinese. And no one says a word about refugees. But in the case of Israel, the displaced Arabs have become internal refugees. Everyone insists that Israel must take back every single Arab. I'm not going to comment too much about it. I'm just going to let Eric Hoffer talk in case he's much. I think he was much more widely read in everything than me. So I'm not an expert on Israel, I have to admit. I have spent some time there, so I do have a favorable view of Israel. Anyway, let's go on. Other nations, when victorious on the battlefield, dictate peace terms. But when Israel is victorious, it must sue for peace. Everyone expects the Jews to be the only real Christians in the world. Wow. Okay, so he's given us a historical example. The Swedish example. The Swedes, this is during the Vietnam War, to set the context. This is like late 60s. The Swedes, who are ready to break off diplomatic relations with America because of what we did in Vietnam, did not let out a peep when Hitler was slaughtering Jews. They sent Hitler choice iron ore and ball bearings and served his troops in Norway. Yeah, so they were helping him because they knew that if they did not help the Nazis, they would get slaughtered. Obviously, with the case of America in the 60s and now, is you can say anything about America and you're not going to get wiped out. You can be president of or prime minister, let's say, of Canada and criticize the American politics and the president or whatever, and nothing will happen to you, even though obviously if America wanted to crush Canada, let's say, even though that would be very foolish, they could do so and probably be successful, although that would result in a mayhem that I could not even imagine. Okay, this is a very, very interesting last quote. I really have to say that I really agree with it, because there's something about Israel that I think is very important. I think. Okay, the quote goes, "I have a premonition that will not leave me. As it goes with Israel, so will go with all of us. Should Israel perish, the Holocaust will be upon us all." Yeah, so this is, I think nowadays Israel has having issues with Iran, and I think that if there will be a time when Israel gets destroyed, it doesn't bode well for the rest of the world, I think. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Okay, let's go on. On a more brighter note, the end of war. A war is not won if the defeated enemy has not been turned into a friend. So one of the classic examples is when Japan surrendered, and when Germany surrendered in World War II, and they're now one of the best friends of America, close allies. Eric Hoffer on hate. Take away hatred from some people and you will have men without faith. Or perhaps men without purpose. That could be the same thing. And obviously ISIS is an example. Eric Hoffer on Americans. This is a kind of critique of Americans, even though Eric Hoffer was very, very proud American. But here we go. The superficiality of the American is the result of his hustling. It needs leisure to think things out. It needs leisure to mature. People in a hurry cannot think, cannot grow, nor can they decay. They are preserved in a state of perpetual puerility. Again, let's look up this word, puerility. Right, let's see. Webster. No, I wanna. Let's go here. The quality or state of being pure. I did not expect that word to. Modesty, synonyms: chastity, immaculacy, innocence, chasteness. Wow, did not expect that. I expected kind of like not being mature. Anyway, whatever the case may be, he's making a case that because a lot of Americans are constantly busy, or at least that was the case back then. It's not the case now, especially with the coronavirus and all that. I think people have time to reflect on what's important and not. So I think we're really going through a big change in our society, and yeah, I think he's also making a case here for having some downtime where you just think, or having some downtime just to live life. But then again, people are built different ways. Some people can work 100 hours a week, and some people would just prefer to work 25. We're all, or zero. We're all very different. Okay. Only here in America. This is a very, very American quote, by the way. Very kind of patriotic / pro-American. Okay, here it goes. Only here in America were the common folk of the old world, meaning Europe, given a chance to show what they could do on their own without a master to push and order them about. History contrived a nerve-shattering joke when it lifted by the nape of the neck lowly peasants, shopkeepers, laborers, paupers, jailbirds, and drunks from the midst of Europe, dumped them on a vast virgin continent, and said, "Go to it, it is yours." And the lowly were not awed by the magnitude of their task. A hunger for action, pent up for centuries, found an outlet. They went into it with an axe, pick, shovel, plow, rifle, on foot, on horse, in wagons, and on float boats. They went into it praying, howling, singing, brawling, drinking, and fighting. Make way for the people. I just love this quote. It's very kind of cinematic. It's, yeah, I just love it. Eric Hoffer and kindness. Kindness can become its own motive. We are made kind by being kind. Yeah, there's a lot of people that want to ascribe ulterior motives to being kind. But here he's saying that actually, if you are kind, then as you are kind and kind on a daily basis, you're made kind. So it would seem that our actions and kind of small choices throughout the day actually shape our character, which I think Aristotle would very much agree with this kind of philosophy. Oh, and here we go. And this is another one, a great one, Mahatma Gandhi. An ounce of practice is worth more than tons of preaching. Very true. All right. Ooh, this is a very thought-provoking one. Very interesting. Okay. On corruption, he says that it has often been said that power corrupts, but it is perhaps equally important to realize that weakness too corrupts. Power corrupts the few, the ones that have money, fame, what else? Money, fame, prestige, let's say. So power corrupts the few, while weakness corrupts the many. Hatred, malice, rudeness, intolerance, and suspicion are the faults of weakness. The resentment of the weak does not spring from any injustice done to them, but from the sense of inadequacy and impotence. We cannot win the weak by sharing our wealth with them. They feel our generosity as oppression. as Saint Vincent de Paul cautioned his disciples to deport themselves, so that the poor will forgive them the bread you gave them. Basically, the saint, I don't know this saint, but the saint was saying that, um, be careful to his disciples. Be careful when you give bread to the poor. So yeah, go away quickly, because they will not like you. Which is, yeah, we cannot win the weak by sharing our wealth with them. I saw a an opposite point Eric Hoffer once made, that you share your hatred, kind of, or something. I don't know how that would work. You share your hatred. Let's say, I guess that does work in a way. Practically, if, let's say, uh, a real life example would be that the U.S. government says to some tribes that in Afghanistan they do not have a good relationship with, but still says, well, let's fight the common enemy, which would be ISIS. So in that way, kind of, the lesser of two evils, they fighting the bigger evil, I guess, which is ISIS. And in that way, um, Hoffer's theory would point to. So in that way, Hoffer's theory would point us to the fact that this is actually helping the cause. They are actually respecting us, because we're sharing our hatred with them. But if we just went out and just gave them money, that wouldn't work as well, because they do not respect it. Again, it comes from the corruption of the weakness of the human spirit. Hatred, malice, rudeness, intolerance, and suspicion. Um, and it's usually doesn't come from any injustice done to them, although they might rationalize them, but it comes from a feeling of, or a sense of inadequacy and impotence. Um, so that's why giving people that accuse you of things stuff a lot of times will not um, result in a thing that you want, according to Eric Hoffer. Let's say I tend to agree with him. I don't know if this actually works in all cases, but I'm not here to critique Eric Hoffer. I love his work, so here I am. Let's go. All right, rudeness is the weak man's imitation of strength. Here we go. A classic Eric Hoffer truism, aphorism. Basically, if somebody is rude, that is their way of imitating strength, because they do not, the strength of a really strong person would be to not say something that can destroy a person, because, or to forgive, let's say, or that would be a strong person, a person in power, a person that just is not as powerful inside, will use things that would equate to the lower denominator of human interactions, let's say. Okay, the best education will not immunize. Excuse me. The best education will not immunize a person against the corruption by power. Yeah, this is very interesting. Education means nothing, because once you have power, that tends to corrupt, especially if you have unlimited power. I don't think I'm gonna play this here, or I might. Okay. It is disconcerting to realize that businessmen, generals, soldiers, men of action are less corrupted by power than intellectuals. You take a conventional man of action, and he's satisfied if you obey, but not the intellectual. He doesn't want you to just obey. He wants you to get down on your knees and pray the one who makes you love what you hate and hate what you love. So, in other words, whenever the intellectuals are in power, there's soul raping going on. I'm gonna leave this video in the description. Okay, this is very interesting. He says that it is probably true that business corrupts everything it touches. It corrupts politics, sports, literature, art, labor unions, and so on. But business also corrupts and undermines monolithic totalitarianism. Capitalism is at its liberating best in a non-capitalist environment. Because in a non-capitalist environment, the people are hungry for freedom. So there, the liberation of capitalism is the most profound. Okay, we're almost at the end here. Eric Hoffer in writing. There's an idea that cannot be expressed. There's not an idea that cannot be expressed in 200 words. But the writer must know precisely what he wants to say. If you have nothing to say and want badly to say it, then all the words in all the dictionaries will not suffice. Wordiness is a sickness of American writing. Too many words dilute and blur ideas. So he's saying be pithy, basically. Be pithy and tell me what you know, but not in a fancy way. Tell me in a really simple way. And I think like if you have a debate with somebody and somebody goes into a very abstract thing, that does not serve anybody. And I think it's the same with writing. If you want to introduce a topic simply, then you don't have to write 20 pages on it. Write 2 pages and see where that leads you. See if you can even write it in 2 pages. Okay. So this is an example during the time when Eric Hoffer was, what was he doing? He was, he was a visiting professor and not really a professor per se, but he dropped off at Berkeley from time to time, and interacted with students and so on. Even though, he doesn't have a college degree. That's quite an achievement for somebody without a college degree. So here he's speaking about his personal experience that one fellow thought he'd written a masterpiece, lots of pages. And I told him to put it all on one page and find out what it was that he wanted to say and then come back and show me. He never came back. I tell all of them they won't be able to think clearly until they can write clearly. And this is very interesting. So he's equating writing clearly with thinking clearly, which is, I think, a very good point. On the simpler the words in which a thought is expressed, the more stimulating the effect. Yeah, I would agree with that. The majority of great quotes are really succinct, but they, prime example are Eric Hoffer quotes, which are very succinct but very powerful. This is the cure for the evils of the world, let's say. So Eric Hoffer says, compassion is probably the only antitoxin of the soul. Where there is compassion, even the most poisonous impulses remain relatively harmless. One would rather see the world run by men who set their hearts on toys, but are accessible to pity, than by men animated by lofty ideals, whose dedication makes them ruthless. In the chemistry of man's soul, almost all noble attributes, courage, honor, hope, faith, duty, loyalty, etc., can be transmuted into ruthlessness. Compassion alone stands apart from the continuous traffic between good and evil proceeding within us. So he's putting compassion above and beyond a lot of different things, because he's saying courage can be used to manipulate you. I'm sure it's a bit like World War II, Japan, kamikaze. They were courageous. They were for honor. They were hopeful that the empire was going to survive. They had faith that they had the duty. Oh, they had the duty to protect the country. They had the loyalty, etc. And they were ruthless. But I believe if they had more compassion as far as personally, and maybe even, I don't know how you would run a country in compassion. I'm kind of, but let's say if it was more prevalent, let's say in Japan in World War II, um, probably Japan probably wouldn't be in the war. But then again, this is a hypothetical, so it doesn't mean anything. Moving on. No one is truly literate who cannot read his own heart. Cute quote. Hoffer and minding your own business. A man is likely to mind his own business when it is worth minding. When it is not, he takes his mind off his own meaningless affairs by minding other people's business. So there's a German proverb: to sweep in front of your own door. I was kind of expecting this to be longer. All right, Eric Hoffer and mass movements. A mass movement attracts and holds a following not because it can satisfy the desire for self-advancement, but because it can satisfy the passion for self-renunciation. Okay, so let's again, Nazism. You don't, you go there because you don't want freedom. Basically, because freedom, as much as we like freedom, and in the modern world we like, oh, let's praise freedom, but freedom is actually a burden, because freedom means the responsibilities on you. So if you don't make it in school, the likely scenario is, the likely blame is on you. And that's freedom. That's freedom to either succeed or not. And then societies obviously have different safety nets and so on. But still, the basic principle applies here. So a lot of Nazis, even though a lot of them were indoctrinated, but a lot of the attraction was that joining a mass movement means that you can you can submerge yourself in this movement, and then you just follow orders, and you have everything sorted. Your life is sorted out because they are in control of your life. So it's like your burden has been lifted from you, as strange as that may sound. And this is also true in positive movements. uh, Nazism obviously is a negative movement, as some others like ISIS is as well. But there's the movement of Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi, the movement of Jesus, his disciples, and others, um, which is a tremendously positive one. But there again, it's um, even though I don't entirely agree. Maybe there is still some desire for self-advancement in the people that join these religions, but mostly it's like about, um, or here's a picture of Obama. That's more of a current example where um, a lot of people rally with one man, and they they see the kind of salvation with that. They see that this is gonna turn their life around. This is gonna be amazing. And uh, but with that is also like, if you're part of that movement, you feel like you don't need to self-advance, because that's you're basically self-sacrificing yourself for the greater goal. But that, I guess that would be more true for people that were actually volunteers in the Obama campaigns, both campaigns, and so on. Anyway, I went a bit on a tangent here. What I'm trying to say is that there's a difference between joining a mass movement, either positive or negative one, and the desire for self-advancement, which a classic example that comes to mind right now would be Bruce Lee, which is, he was not a member of any mass movement per se. He was a member of a few, like, um, he studied different styles, but he wasn't a member of any huge political group, or he wasn't a member of any particular style exclusively. So he took anything that worked in any style and kind of incorporated and maybe even made it better on his own. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. Faith in a holy cause is to a considerable extent a substitute for the lost faith in ourselves. Right. So faith in a holy cause is to a considerable extent a substitute for the lost faith in ourselves. Again, this is alluding to the same kind of principle that having a faith into a holy cause, whether it be positive, like the Gandhi movement, or the negative one, like ISIS. Um, he's saying that this is to a large extent, a substitute for what, because we don't have faith in ourselves, which is interesting. It's almost like the people that join the movements are people that feel something in their life is lacking, and they don't really believe in themselves that they can pull themselves out of it. Now, if they join a positive movement, then I'm generally all for it. But obviously, a negative movement will have negative consequences in their lives. Okay. Charlatanism is, of some degrees, indispensable to effective leadership. There can be no mass movement without some deliberate misinterpretation of facts. Again, this very much applies to politics. The exaggerations, the bearing false witness, and all that seems to be kind of staple of politics. Unless a man has talents to make something of himself, freedom is an irksome burden. But of what avail is freedom to choose if the self be ineffectual? We can join a mass movement to escape individual responsibility, or, in the words of the ardent young Nazi, to be free from freedom. Again, I alluded to this before, same principle. Passion and hatred can give meaning and purpose to an empty life. And that is the reason why mass movements, Hoffer says, always need an enemy. Yeah, mass movements can rise and spread without belief in God, but never without belief in a devil. So the Nazis had a devil, which were the Jews. And ISIS, let's say, have a devil, or had a devil. I don't know if it's still around. Had a devil of the non-believers. The non-believers are the devil. America or Israel, that's what they view as the devil. The responsibility, the weight of responsibility, is this. This is what this quote is alluding to. Modern man is weighed down more by the burden of responsibility than by the burden of sin. We think him more a savior who shoulders our responsibilities than him who shoulders our sins. If, instead of making decisions, we have but to obey and do our duty, we feel it as a sort of salvation. And again, this explains Nazism perfectly, because they just have to obey. They just had to do their duty. And that was it. Everything else was taken care of. All the decisions, what they should do, where they should be, all of that is arranged. Now, this is also true, obviously, in some positive movements, but it seems to me that the negative movements even have they're more encroaching on an individual, let's say, and then some of them have ended in really bad way. Like some cults, there was a cult of that drank Kool-Aid and died. So that's another example of a negative mass movement ending in the worst way possible. Eric Hoffer on talent. They who lack talent expect things to happen without effort. They ascribe failure to a lack of inspiration or ability, or to misfortune, rather than to insufficient application. And this is very interesting because um, it's like a lot of people have this arrogance that things are going to happen without much effort. And the only reason that they're not successful is because of some misfortune. But then, and he goes on, at the core of every true talent, there is an awareness of the difficulties inherent in any achievement and the confidence that by persistence and patience, something worthwhile will be realized. Thus, talent is a species of vigor. Yeah, persistence, patience, and then something of value will be born out of that. I think a lot of businesses are created by men who work and women who work and work and work and work, sometimes months, sometimes years before any result or any income is seen. So they just persevere. We are told that talent creates its own opportunities, but it sometimes seems that intense desire creates not only its own opportunities, but its own talents. I think Bruce Lee had a similar quote. I don't know if he got it from Eric Hoffer, though. Seems like Eric Hoffer wrote it first, so I'll credit Hoffer here. Eric Hoffer in gratitude. The hardest arithmetic to master is that which enables us to count our blessings. An attitude of gratitude brings great tidings. Thanks. My God. Why am I misreading? Hoffer and wariness. Men worry as much of not doing the things they want to do as of doing the things they do not want to do. Wow. Let me say that again. Men worry as much of not doing the things they want to do as of doing things they want to do. Men, let me read this again. Men worry as much of not doing the things they want to do as of doing the things they do not want to do. So if you're doing something that you do not, so if you're doing something that you do not want to be doing, that's as bad as not doing the things you want to do. Wow. So doing something that you don't want to do is going to be very tiring. And then on top of that, if you're not doing the things you want to do, then it's a double whammy, because you're getting tired, you're getting burned out by not doing the things you want to do. And then when you have free time, you're not doing the things you want to do. So you get double tired. You're getting tired because you're dragging your feet, and then you get tired because you have a job you don't enjoy. And wow. So all that time spent at home watching Netflix is actually impeding on your ability to succeed, because you're getting double tired. You're getting tired at work that you don't enjoy, and you're getting tired at home because you're dragging your feet and you're not doing the things you want to do. Wow. Our great awareness comes from work not done, and this is something we don't want to finish, or we are avoiding or procrastinating. That in itself creates um, tiredness, because we think about it, and it's almost like in our mind we are like trying to do it or trying to avoid to do it, but that exerts a psychic I would say a psychic work. And so you're losing energy because we cycle it in our mind over and over again. Anyway, that's just my theory. Hoffer on change. Every adjustment is a crisis in self-esteem. I can confirm that from my personal life experience. And every extreme attitude is a flight from the self. Yeah. The protesters, by and large, not people that are very stable in their personal lives, in my experience, or from what I've seen online. These are not very stable individuals, either way, either political spectrum. But then again, you can tell by how they're protesting. That's the thing as well. If they're totally peaceful protesters, or are they doing something they shouldn't be doing? Eric Hoffer on faith. Where there is the necessary skill, technical skill to move mountains, there is no need for the faith that moves mountains. Wow. So this would kind of explain the atheism that occurs in modern countries, because we have, in a sense, we have the technical skill to move mountains, so the faith to move mountains is not needed. That would be, I guess that's one way of looking at it. The opposite of the religious fanatic is not the fanatical atheist, but the gentle cynic who cares not whether there is a God or not. Yeah, because religious fanatic and the fanatical atheists are both have both one thing in common. They're very fanatical about what they believe in. But the opposite is the gentle cynic who doesn't even give a shit. To know a person's religion, we need not listen to his profession of faith, but must find his brand of intolerance. So what does this person cannot tolerate? What does he hate? What does he not tolerate? And then we see what kind of brand of religion or whatever the belief system is, which you could call in a way a religion because it's a set of belief systems. Hoffer and wants. You can never get enough of what you don't need to make you happy. And the most sensitive among us cannot be as observant of themselves as the least sensitive are observant of others. Again, this is a very perceptive quote. It's saying that even if you're very psychic or if you're very good at reading people, people are still going to be very observant of you, despite the fact that you are very sensitive to like what other people are, or even yourself. People still are going to be able to pick up on what you are. So in a way, that's encouraging, but I don't know if this is universally true, because some people do seem very sincere, but then as you get to know them, you see they're really not. Okay, I think this is it. This was my just my presentation of Slovenia at the end. I don't really know. Yeah, okay, let me just do this as well. So the country of Slovenia is about half the size of Switzerland, about twice of Lebanon, the size of Israel, let's say. Population of 2 million people, about the same as Paris. I was in Paris, by the way, when I did this. And we gained independence from a country called Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia in 1991. Okay, and we here sandwiched between Italy, Austria, Hungary, and Croatia. Not many people know that. And this is Slovenia. Zoom in, and this is a Bohinjsko Lake Bohin, and very pretty. I was never on there, although I did see it from a distance. Very pretty. And this is another town. This is a town, Valea. This is a I forget her name now. get killed online. She was a very famous skier, female skier that had a lot of success. Goran Dragic, and now Luka Doncic, which is he plays for Dallas Mavericks. Jan Oblak, Atletico Madrid. Samir Hadanovic, Inter Milan. Slavoj Žižek, all Slovenian. This is a statue from Valania, and the wife of Donald Trump is also from Slovenia. And that'll be that. I didn't realize that this is gonna take such a long time.